The snow fell in thick, gentle flakes over the city streets as Oscar held his daughter Julia's mittened hand. Christmas Eve had painted the world in shimmering whites and golds, with storefronts glowing like jewel boxes and carolers humming in the distance. Julia, only 7 years old, pressed her nose against every shop window they passed, her breath fogging the glass as she marveled at the decorations inside. "Daddy, look, that teddy bear is bigger than me," she exclaimed, tugging at Oscar's coat sleeve. Oscar smiled down at his daughter, his heart warming despite the bitter cold. It had been just the two of them for 3 years now, ever since Julia's mother had passed. Each Christmas felt like a test of his strength, a challenge to create magic when his own heart still ached. But Julia's joy was infectious, and tonight, watching her eyes sparkle with wonder, he felt something close to peace. They turned down Morrison Street, heading toward the small apartment they called home. The street was quieter here, away from the main shopping district. Strings of multicolored lights drooped between lampposts, and someone's radio played Silent Night from an open window above. That's when Julia stopped walking. Her hand went rigid in Oscar's grasp, and she stood perfectly still, staring at something ahead. Oscar followed her gaze and felt his breath catch in his throat. Huddled against the brick wall of a closed bakery was a woman unlike any he had ever seen. At first glance, she appeared human, wrapped in what looked like layers of tattered blankets and torn clothing, but as Oscar's eyes adjusted to the dim streetlight, he noticed the subtle wrongness of her features. Her skin had a faint luminescence, like moonlight on water. Where her hair should have been, there were thin, crystalline strands that seemed to shimmer and shift colors. Her hands, clutching the blankets around her thin frame, had 6 fingers each. Most striking of all were her eyes. Even from a distance, Oscar could see them large, almond-shaped, and filled with a depth of sadness that seemed older than the stars themselves. They were violet, swirling with flecks of silver, and they stared straight ahead at nothing, as if she had given up on seeing anything worth looking at. "Daddy," Julia whispered, her voice small and trembling. "Is she okay?" Oscar didn't know how to answer. His protective instincts screamed at him to pull Julia away, to hurry home and pretend they'd seen nothing. The world had changed so much in the past decade. First contact had happened when Julia was just a toddler, ships appearing in Earth's skies, beings from distant worlds seeking refuge from wars and disasters humanity could barely comprehend. The government had established protocols, integration programs, refugee centers, but not everyone had been welcomed. Not everyone had found a place. Some aliens had fallen through the cracks, just like homeless humans did, and this woman, this being from another world, had clearly been forgotten. "I don't know, sweetheart," Oscar finally said. But Julia had already pulled her hand free from his and was walking toward the woman. "Julia, wait." Oscar rushed after her, his heart pounding. The girl approached slowly, carefully, as if approaching a wounded bird. When she was a few feet away, she knelt down in the snow, ignoring the cold seeping through her pink coat. The alien woman's eyes shifted to focus on her, and for a moment, a flicker of awareness crossed her otherworldly features. "Hello," Julia said softly. "I'm Julia. What's your name?" The woman's lips moved, and a sound emerged, musical like wind chimes in a gentle breeze, but shaped into something approximating human speech. Zaelith. "That's a pretty name," Julia said, smiling. "Are you cold? You look really cold." Zelith's violet eyes filled with something that might have been tears, though they shimmered more like liquid starlight. She nodded, a very human gesture that made Oscar's chest tighten. Julia turned to look up at her father, and in that moment, Oscar saw something that broke his heart and mended it all at once. His daughter's face was filled with pure, uncomplicated compassion, the kind only children seemed capable of, before the world taught them to be afraid or indifferent. "Daddy," Julia said, her voice steady and certain, "can we take her home?" Oscar stood there, snow collecting on his shoulders, staring at his 7-year-old daughter and the alien woman huddled against the cold bakery wall. 1,000 reasons why this was a bad idea flooded his mind. They barely had enough money as it was. Their apartment was tiny, just 2 bedrooms and a kitchen that doubled as a living room. He knew nothing about Zalith or her needs. What if she was dangerous? What if there were legal complications? What if? But then Zalith looked at him, and in her eyes, he saw something achingly familiar. He saw the same loss he'd carried for 3 years, the same loneliness that crept into his bed each night after Julia fell asleep. He saw someone who had lost everything and everyone, someone who had ended up alone in a strange world with no one to care if she lived or died. He saw himself, or what he might have become if not for the little girl tugging at his coat. Oscar took a deep breath, the cold air burning his lungs. Tomorrow was Christmas, the season of miracles, or so they said. Maybe it was time he believed in one. He knelt down beside Julia and looked at Zalith. "Can you walk?" he asked gently. Zalith stared at him for a long moment, as if unable to comprehend the question. Then, slowly, she nodded. Oscar stood and extended his hand. "Then come with us. Let's get you somewhere warm." As Zalith's six-fingered hand reached up to grasp his and Julia beamed with joy beside him, Oscar wondered what exactly he was getting himself into. But as they began walking through the snow toward home, Julia holding Zalith's other hand, he decided that sometimes the right thing to do was also the most complicated, and sometimes Christmas miracles came in the most unexpected forms.